So first of all, congratulations on 30 years. You know, it's an amazing accomplishment, you know, and your mission, your vision for the Conservancy, your vision and your mission for the Conservancy is incredible. You know, I always think back to those of you who like to read John Muir, and, you know, he recommended in his day that every community, every school should have a back 40, should have a wooded area, a place where kids can go out and explore nature, have a sense of wonder, and develop a conservation ethic. And you are walking the talk of that, so congratulations. All of us have been involved in planning projects. If you ever planned a big project, you know how difficult the initial planning can be. People often describe the initial phase as fuzzy because it lacks a clear and compelling vision. You know, a clear vision is not a wish or a dream. It's not a vague wish or a dream, but a picture so clear and strong that will help make the desired outcome real. For that reason, vision has often been described as hope with a blueprint. You know, just to compare something, contrast these two visions. We will be a leader in space exploration, and the second one, we will put a man on the moon in 10 years. The latter is obviously much more clear and more compelling. That vision must be relevant, appealing, engaging, and must be a picture that can be carried in the hearts and minds of all people. And I think, what an amazing thing, the vision you have. Think of Detroit, an industrial town. The vast majority of the waterfront was industry and then became brownfields. You couldn't have access to it. Their vision, build Detroit's new waterfront porch called the Detroit Riverwalk. You know, when we worked on the conservation vision for the lower Detroit River ecosystem, we came up with a vision. We want to build the only international wildlife refuge in North America. And of course, you're saving the conservation crescent. But putting into a vision statement, the conservation crescent is protected so that all species, including humans, can thrive. What an exceptional way. What a great way of visualizing a conservation goal of saving this crescent-shaped chain of islands, shoreline areas, wetlands along the southern end of the Detroit River and Grosse. The first time I heard this was the late 90s from the Grosse Nature and Land Conservancy and people like Bruce Jones. We were in the fight of our lives, so to speak, in trying to save Humbug Marsh and Humbug Island. A developer came in. It was the last mile of natural shoreline on the U.S. mainland of the Detroit River. And they said, what a great place to put a golf course, a riding stables, an amphitheater, to put in housing, a bridge or a causeway to Humbug Island, and build McMansions and put a marina in there. It would be like every suburban place. So that came up, and Bruce was really good at articulating Humbug was like a keystone of the conservation crescent. And what a great way to think about that. But it's much more than that. And think of Stony Island, this 52-acre uninhabited island now owned by Michigan Department of Natural Resources. Back in the 90s, it was threatened by development. In the mid-90s, you, Grosse Nature and Land Conservancy, successfully advocated for a $750,000 grant from the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund to preserve that island. And here we are today with it preserved. Then, in 2013 to 2018, of course, Friends of Detroit River and many partners championed an $8 million habitat restoration project through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. You see the picture of it there. And Boblo Island, an island in Canada, is part of the conservation easement. And today, nearly half the southern end of Boblo is protected. It's part of White Sands Conservation Area, which is owned and stewarded by Essex Region Conservation Authority. And of course, we had Sugar Island, and it was a party island, and it was on the market for over a decade for anyone to purchase. And then finally, we were able to reach agreement on a price and put that into the refuge in 2011. And now there is an amazing habitat restoration project going on there for $18 million. That island has lost 20% of its surface area to erosion because it faced the lower end of the Detroit River and the big storms of western Lake Erie. And when those storms would hit that, it would erode the shoreline. So 20% of the island no longer exists. It was eroded away. So this is going to protect it, but it's also going to enhance habitat at the same time. And of course, Gibraltar Bay. We know about Gibraltar Bay, but most people don't know just what an amazing place it is. It's one of Detroit River's most significant coastal wetlands. The diversity of fish in there is exceptional. The number of birds you get to see back there is amazing. And of course, there's the American lotus as well. But we have the Gibraltar Bay unit. It was part of the Naval Air Station from 1927 to 1969. It became part of the Public Health Service back in the 60s. And then when they created U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, they transferred it over to that, and it became the Large Lakes Research Station. That property, this was stewarded by Grosse Nature and Land Conservancy for many, many years. In the early days, starting in the early 2000s, we chased a number of grants together with the Grosse Nature and Land Conservancy for $80,000 to restore a natural shoreline there, and then it was, of course, transferred into the refuge system called now the Gibraltar Bay Unit. But the first project was the Navy Seabees, to sort of get the relationship of working with the military for us in the downriver area. And you can imagine what was put out there in World War I, end of World War I, World War II, that things were just thrown back out there. So we worked with them to pull out everything from gunner's chairs to ammo boxes to everything under the sun. It looked like two massive piles, about two piles, or like a two-car garage of just things that we were going to try to recycle, do the right thing, or dispose of. And then we found out because of World War I and World War II, we couldn't do that. We had to have a military historian come in and look at all of that before we disposed of it to make sure there was nothing of significance there. So on the left is what it looked like when we started, 2003, and then in 2004, all that broken concrete, all that rebar, all that military debris was all removed, and a great project of working together with the Grosse Nature and Land Conservancy. I love this early graphic. It was called the Grosse Nature Area back then, and it's now the Gibraltar Bay Unit, but what a great graphic. And if you look, pretty much we've lived up to that vision over time. And then right next to it, as Brian said, right at the end of that trail that goes from Grosse Road on airport property, there's a new fence in there, goes all the way down to the Gibraltar Bay Unit, and then right next to it, of course, is the airport natural area that's owned by the township, stewarded by the Conservancy. There, again, was part of the Naval Air Station, so a whole bunch of debris was left over and thrown into the Gibraltar Bay. So that had to all be removed, and now building all of the decks and the trails and making it open from dawn to dusk. What an accomplishment, not only for Grosse, but for all of downriver. And think about it, what a great place for birding. Detroit Audubon has identified it as a birding hotspot for all of southeast Michigan. We have Celeron Island, another 68-acre uninhabited island. FDR and others, Friends of Detroit River and others, championed an $8.4 million habitat restoration project between 2013 and 2020. This is amazing to see the scale of what has gone on. in the Conservation Crescent. And here's another island that was threatened by development, Calf Island. It's only 11 acres in size, but it has some beautiful coastal wetlands off the tail end of the island, that island was on the market, and we got the Nature Conservancy to take it off the market because in the federal government, we are not very nimble. We could not move very quickly, so the Nature Conservancy could take it off the market, and then we would reimburse them for that cost. And that's exactly what happened. And of course, we've got Humbug Marsh and the Refuge Gateway. What an amazing story. 25 years ago this year, they had the first hearing in Gibraltar Carlson High School. It was a rainy night and so many people came out. Made in Detroit wanted to develop it into, like I said, housing, golf course, a marina, McMansions on the island. And we were going to lose the last mile of natural shoreline on the U.S. mainland of the Detroit River. So many people came out to that public hearing in Gibraltar Carlson High School that the fire marshal had to close the doors and say, if you want to go, you can't come in. It's against the law. State police were at the Gibraltar Road exit. They said they put two vehicles out there with the flashers on saying, if you want to go to the public hearing, don't go, you won't get in. They just closed the doors. Keep driving. Most of those people, the vast majority of those people said, we need to protect it. It was a citizen victory to protect that. And what an amazing project. And of course, Grosse Nature and Land Conservancy and people like Bruce Jones were on the foundation of making the case that it was part of the Conservation Crescent. It's part of our legacy to save this. In total, 16 acres of wetlands have been restored out there. And of course, the Detroit River has lost 97% of its coastal wetland habitat. So that's significant from that perspective. 25 acres of upland buffer habitat have been restored. Phragmites have been controlled along the shoreline of the Refuge Gateway, Humbug, and the island. And of course, a whole bunch of invasive species work, like Peter does, on 50 acres of upland habitat. This was what it looked like, the Refuge Gateway, when it was a brownfield. It was a Chrysler automotive brake and paint plant site for 44 years. They took down the structures so they would lower their tax burden, and then it became a brownfield. So it sat vacant. And that's what it looked like for 14 years. And in the fight to save Humbug, we were able to purchase this property for Wayne County to become the gateway to the International Wildlife Refuge. But with that, we had to clean it up. We had responsibility to clean it up not only to human health standards, but wildlife, which is even higher. It's a higher lift to get there. Now, today, it's the first project in the world to clean up an industrial brownfield sufficiently to serve as an ecological buffer for a wetland of international importance. Amazing. There's about 2,400 and some wetlands of international importance throughout the world, 41 in the United States, only one in Michigan, and it's Humbug Marsh, and it's part of the Conservation Crescent. And of course, one of the goals is to bring conservation to cities there. It's trying to walk the talk like you're doing. You have a visitor center, it has outdoor classrooms, it's got trails and learning stations. So bring conservation to cities, help make nature part of everyday urban life, inspire a sense of wonder, all for urban areas. Because 80% of all the people now in the United States and Canada live in urban areas. Where's the next generation of conservationists or environmentalist or sustainability entrepreneur going to come from? It's going to be likely from urban areas. And so that's what they're trying to do there. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. Paul told me I would do that. It then won an Excellence in the Waterfront Award from the Waterfront Center, a national award back in 2018. So reflecting back, Stony Island, Sugar Island, Calf Island, Humbug Island, and Marsh were all threatened by development, making the case that it was part of the conservation easement, that is something that we can have as a gift to future generations was so important. But we're not done. Maybe it's time to re-energize the Conservation Crescent. And maybe we could have a slogan. Maybe we could have it: to live, work, and play in the heart of the Conservation Crescent. We need to think about using that more, the Conservation Crescent. It's a great way to teach. It's a great model for us. Thank you very much.